Galactic Council Archive recording. Date: 7,249.3 standard cycles. Begin playback of assessment session 2749, the automated system announced, its crystalline voice echoing through the grand chamber. Subject species, humans. Earth designation, Sol 3. High Counselor Thextar adjusted his ceremonial robes, the shimming fabric catching the light from the 12 moons visible through the chamber's transparent dome. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he surveyed the gathered representatives of the Galactic Council's most prestigious species. The Myraxians with their flowing tentacles, the crystalline Zentari, and even the rarely seen gas-formed Nebulons had assembled for this assessment. My esteemed colleagues, Thexitar's voice resonated through the chamber, each word precisely measured. We gather today to discuss the most peculiar species we have encountered in our 10,000 cycles of exploration. The humans. A gentle murmur rippled through the assembly. The Zentari's crystal formations chimed in harmony with their amusement. As your appointed observer, I spent 3 Earth years among them, Thexitar continued, gesturing to the holographic display materializing above the central podium. And I must say they are the most contradictory species we have ever encountered. The display showed scenes from Earth, children playing in parks, scientists working in laboratories, artists creating beautiful works, all peaceful, all harmonious, all absolutely misleading. When we first detected their transmissions, Thexitar paused, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. We expected to find a war-torn world. Their entertainment broadcasts showed countless simulations of conflict. Their information networks were filled with records of violence. Yet when we arrived, we found this. The hologram shifted to show humans welcoming alien delegations with open arms, sharing their culture, their science, their art. Several council members nodded appreciatively. The Nebulon representative pulsed a soft shade of approval blue. They seemed perfect candidates for membership. Thexitar's upper eyes narrowed while his lower pair remained fixed on the assembly. Their technological advancement rate was impressive, though not threatening. Their cultural exchange programs were enthusiastic. Their diplomatic corps was unfailingly polite. A Myraxian representative raised a tentacle. High Counselor, your tone suggests an upcoming revelation that contradicts these positive observations? Thexitar's scales shifted from their formal blue-green to a cautionary amber. Indeed, Representative Foxus, what we failed to understand then, what we almost missed entirely, was that humans had not achieved peace through enlightenment. They had achieved it through regulation. The hologram flickered, showing a new image. A simple document titled Geneva Conventions. We thought their peaceful nature was innate. Thexitar's voice dropped to a near whisper, forcing the assembly to lean forward. We were wrong. They hadn't evolved beyond violence. They had simply agreed to rules about it. The chamber erupted in confused chittering and crystalline discord. A Zentari elder's surface facets clouded with concern. Rules for violence? What purpose could such a contradiction serve? Thexitar raised all 4 hands for silence. My friends, what I am about to share will fundamentally change how we view humanity. It began during a routine cultural exchange when one of their military personnel, a Marine, explained to my junior observer what humans call war crimes. The High Counselor's scales rippled with remembered unease, and that conversation made us realize that humans weren't the harmless, peace-loving species we thought they were. They were something far more fascinating and far more terrifying. The holographic display shifted, showing the first landing of Galactic Council ships on the expansive grounds of the United Nations headquarters in New York. Thexitar's scales rippled with what humans would recognize as nostalgia. Our first direct contact with humans exceeded all expectations, Thexitar continued, his voice carrying a hint of amusement. They approached our ships not with weapons, but with a delegation carrying items they called gift baskets. Inside were samples of their foods, cultural artifacts, and data tablets containing greetings in 4,217 different languages. The Nebulon representative pulsed a questioning shade of purple. They seemed prepared for contact? Almost suspiciously so, Thexitar replied, mandibles clicking. They had organizations dedicated to extraterrestrial contact protocols. Their scientific community had drafted detailed plans for knowledge exchange. Their governments had even prepared legal frameworks for interspecies commerce. The hologram displayed scenes from the first 6 months of contact. Humans and aliens working side by side in laboratories, sharing meals in cafeterias, attending cultural events together. A particular image lingered. A young human researcher, Dr. Rachel Chen, excitedly explaining Earth's quantum compression theories to a group of Centauri scientists. Their enthusiasm for learning was, admittedly, infectious. Thexitar gestured to the image. Dr. Chen's work on quantum mechanics advanced our own understanding by several decades. Yet, we missed the significance of how quickly they grasped our technologies. The Meraxian representative, Phoses, rippled their tentacles in a pattern indicating deep thought. They showed no signs of aggression during these exchanges? Thexitar's upper eyes blinked rapidly. That was perhaps our greatest oversight. We mistook their controlled behavior for natural disposition. When human scientists made breakthrough adaptations of our technology, we attributed it to intelligence rather than military application potential. The display showed more images, humans participating in peace conferences, joining galactic environmental initiatives, proposing joint colonization projects. Their behavior seemed perfectly aligned with Council expectations for an emerging spacefaring civilization. They established cultural exchange centers on every major Council world, Thexitar continued. The centers were always staffed with their most accomplished academics, artists, and what they called civilian advisors. We never questioned why many of these advisors had surprisingly extensive knowledge of defensive systems. A Centauri elder's crystalline form refracted light in a pattern suggesting concern. You suggest deliberate deception? No. Thexitar's scales shifted to a thoughtful green. Not deception, preparation. Every human achievement in our databases from this period appears genuine. Their contributions to medical science saved countless lives across Council space. Their environmental restoration techniques helped recover 3 dying worlds. Their art and music brought new forms of beauty to our cultures. The hologram showed a human orchestra performing for a mixed audience of species, the music bringing visible pleasure to even the normally stoic Centauri. But we failed to notice crucial details. Thexitar's voice hardened. Like how their spacecraft, while meeting all safety regulations, could be quickly converted for military use. How their civilian ships all had redundant systems that exceeded peaceful requirements. How their medical advances in treating trauma and tissue regeneration came from centuries of treating combat wounds. The display shifted to architectural plans for human buildings on Council worlds. Even their cultural centers were designed with defensive capabilities. We thought the reinforced walls were due to human paranoia about structural integrity. We were wrong. A new image appeared. A human child teaching a young Meraxian a game called chess. We watched their children play strategic games and thought it charming. Thexitar's mandibles clicked rapidly. We failed to recognize they were teaching military strategy before their young could even write. Every human activity, every interaction, every technological advance carried this duality we completely missed. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Nebulon representative shifted to a deep, contemplative indigo. But the true revelation, Thexitar raised his voice slightly, came when we began examining their history. Not the sanitized version they initially shared, but the complete records. That's when we learned about their wars, their Geneva Conventions, and most importantly, their definitions of war crimes. The High Counselor's scales darkened to a deep blue. And that's when we finally understood why humans had seemed so carefully restrained in every interaction. They weren't naturally peaceful. They were maintaining control. Constant, calculated control. The holographic display flickered, showing a new figure stepping off a transport vessel at the Galactic Council's Cultural Exchange Center on Proxima Centauri Station. Captain Alexandra Steele, United States Marine Corps, assigned as a military liaison for the exchange program. Her arrival changed everything. Thexitar's voice carried a mix of admiration and apprehension. Captain Steele stood exactly 1.78 meters tall, maintained perfect posture, and smiled with unfailing politeness. Yet something about her made my scales itch from the moment she arrived. The Nebulon representative pulsed curiously. "What triggered your suspicion, High Counselor?" "The way she moved," Thexitar gestured at the hologram. While other humans meandered through the station, she moved with purpose. Her eyes constantly scanned rooms, noted exits, assessed threats we didn't even know existed. When asked about this behavior, she called it force of habit. The footage showed Steele's first day at the exchange center. She wore civilian clothes, but her bearing remained unmistakably military. The camera followed her, methodically arranging her quarters, positioning her bed for optimal response to potential threats, checking sightlines through windows. "We thought these actions indicated anxiety or paranoia," Thexitar continued. When questioned, Captain Steele simply shrugged and said, "Better to have and not need than need and not have." We didn't understand the implications of that phrase until much later. The display shifted to a training session where Steele was teaching human martial arts to a mixed group of alien species. Her movements were precise, controlled, yet somehow restrained. The incident that opened our eyes occurred during this basic self-defense class. Thexitar's scales rippled with remembered tension. A young Zentari crystal formation cracked unexpectedly, sending sharp shards toward 3 students. The footage played in slow motion. Captain Steele's reaction was instantaneous. She moved faster than anyone had seen a human move, simultaneously pushing 2 aliens out of harm's way while catching the largest crystal shard, inches from a Meraxian's central nerve cluster. When questioned about her extraordinary response time, Captain Steele claimed it was standard training. Thexitar's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Standard," she said, as if every human could move like that. We soon discovered she was actually moving slower than her full capability, trying not to alarm us. The hologram showed Steele in the station's recreation area, arm wrestling with a Kraxan warrior twice her size. The Kraxan species was known for their tremendous strength, yet Steele's expression remained pleasantly neutral as she matched her opponent's force. "Watch her face," Thexitar directed. "Notice how she maintains that same controlled expression?" We later learned she was using approximately 40% of her actual strength. The Kraxan warrior was using maximum effort. The chamber erupted in murmurs of disbelief. A Zentari elder chimed discordantly. But humans showed no signs of such physical capabilities in our previous interactions. Precisely, Thexitar's scales shifted to a knowing amber. They consistently operated below their full capacity in every interaction. Not just Captain Steele, all of them. When we reviewed our medical data, we discovered humans had been deliberately underperforming in all physical tests. The display showed Steele's daily routine. Her pre-dawn exercises that seemed more ritual than workout. Her meticulous maintenance of her civilian clothes. Her careful documentation of every interaction with non-human species. The true revelation came during an emergency situation, Thexitar continued. A coolant leak threatened the station's primary reactor. Captain Steele took charge without hesitation, coordinating the evacuation with military precision. The footage showed Steele moving through toxic gas, carrying injured aliens to safety, her movements economical and precise despite the deadly environment. She worked without protective gear for 12 minutes, in conditions that should have been fatal to human biology. When our medical team finally reached her, they found Captain Steele had suffered severe chemical burns and respiratory damage. Thexitar paused, all 4 eyes fixed on the assembly. She was still giving orders, organizing rescue teams, and maintaining full situational awareness. When asked about her actions later, she simply said, "Marines leave no one behind." The Meraxian representative's tentacles twisted in confusion. But humans had presented themselves as having limited physical endurance. "Yes," Thexitar nodded. "Because Captain Steele's performance forced us to reevaluate everything we thought we knew about human capabilities. We discovered their military personnel underwent training that pushed their bodies far beyond normal limits. What we had observed in civilian interactions was nowhere near their actual potential." The hologram showed the aftermath. Steele in the medical bay, calmly filing her incident report while receiving treatment for injuries that would have incapacitated most species. But the most disturbing revelation came during her recovery. Thexitar's voice lowered dramatically. When my junior observer, Kexley, asked her about human military training, Captain Steele began explaining the concept of war crimes. And that's when we truly understood what humanity had been hiding beneath their peaceful exterior dot. The holographic display shifted to the medical bay where Captain Steele sat upright in her recovery pod, speaking with junior observer Kexley. Thexitar's scales rippled at the memory. The conversation began innocently enough, Thexitar narrated, his voice measured. Kexley asked about the phrase honor in combat. Captain Steele's response changed our understanding of humanity forever. The recording played honor in combat. Steele's voice was calm, professional. That's why we have the Geneva Conventions. Rules of warfare. Lines we do not cross. Rules for warfare? Kexley's confusion was evident in his rapidly shifting scales. Steele nodded, her expression neutral. Of course, every military force needs guidelines. Things we won't do even to win. No attacking civilians, no torture, no chemical weapons, no biological agents. Basic stuff. The chamber fell silent as the implication sank in. A Zentari elder's crystalline form clouded with distress. They needed rules to prevent such actions? The very concept of these rules suggests— Exactly, Thexitar interrupted. It meant humans had not only conceived of these actions, but had performed them enough times to require formal prohibition. The hologram displayed historical footage that humanity had never shared during their initial contact. Scenes from their world wars, frozen in time. Tanks rolling across devastated landscapes. Cities reduced to rubble. Massive fleets of aircraft darkening skies. Captain Steele explained that human warfare had evolved, Thexitar continued. Early conflicts had no rules. Civilian casualties were common. Entire populations were valid targets. His scales darkened to a deep blue of distress. The Nebulon representative pulsed an alarmed shade of red. They attack non-combatants? Not anymore, Thexitar clarified. That's what made the revelation so disturbing. Humans hadn't become peaceful. They had simply created rules to channel their capacity for violence in specific, regulated ways. The display showed pages from military manuals, training documents, international treaties, each detailed precise restrictions on warfare, carefully defining what was and wasn't acceptable in combat. We asked Captain Steele why these rules existed. Thexitar's mandibles clicked nervously. Her answer was remarkable. She said, "Without rules, war stops being combat and becomes mere slaughter. We regulate warfare to maintain our humanity." The chamber erupted in confused chittering. The concept seemed paradoxical to most species present. But here's what truly frightened us. Thexitar raised all four hands for silence. When we researched their historical conflicts, we discovered these rules hadn't made humans less effective at warfare. They had simply become more precise, more efficient, more surgical in their application of force. The hologram showed modern human military exercises, soldiers moving with controlled precision, weapons designed for minimal collateral damage, tactics emphasizing efficiency over brutality. Their entire military structure, Thexitar explained, is built around maximizing combat effectiveness while adhering to these self-imposed restrictions. Captain Steele called it ethical warfare, as if such a concept wasn't inherently terrifying. The display shifted to show human peacekeeping missions, humanitarian interventions, disaster response operations. Even more unsettling was how they applied military power for peaceful purposes. Their armed forces could build bridges as easily as destroy them, deliver food as efficiently as ordnance, evacuate civilians as effectively as they could clear enemy positions. A Myraxian representative's tentacles coiled tightly. You suggest they maintain combat capability while choosing not to use it? Precisely, Thexitar nodded. When questioned further, Captain Steele explained their philosophy. Si vis pacem, para bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. The hologram showed more historical footage. Human soldiers distributing aid in disaster zones while fully armed. warships protecting civilian shipping lanes, combat aircraft delivering medical supplies. Their military personnel train constantly, Texitar continued. They maintain readiness for conflicts they hope will never come. Every human settlement, every colony, every civilian installation has defensive capabilities built in, hidden beneath peaceful exteriors. The display highlighted human architectural designs, showing hidden defensive positions, emergency bunkers, convertible civilian infrastructure. But the most chilling revelation came when Captain Steele explained why humans created the Geneva Conventions. Texitar's scales shifted to a deep purple of profound concern. She said these rules weren't just about protecting civilians or preventing unnecessary suffering. They were about preventing humanity from using its full capability for destruction. The chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. You see, Texitar's voice dropped lower. Everything prohibited by their war crime statutes, everything forbidden by their conventions. They know how to do all of it. They have merely chosen not to. The rules exist not because these actions are impossible, but because humans know exactly how devastating they could be. The hologram showed the aftermath of human conflicts where these rules had been broken, quickly switching away from the most disturbing images. The assembly recoiled collectively. When we asked Captain Steele about human combat capabilities without these restrictions, Texitar paused, mandibles clicking rapidly. She refused to elaborate. She simply said, "That's why we have the rules, so we never have to find out." A Zentari elder chimed in distress. They possess capabilities beyond what they've demonstrated? Far beyond, Texitar confirmed. Every peaceful human advancement we've witnessed, every technology they've shared, every scientific breakthrough they've achieved, all of it represents carefully controlled applications of knowledge that could be used very differently. The display showed a final image. Captain Steele teaching a group of alien children about Earth's ecosystems, her weapons and combat capabilities completely hidden beneath a peaceful exterior. And that, esteemed colleagues, Texitar concluded this portion, is why we must reevaluate everything we thought we knew about humanity. They are not peaceful because they lack capacity for violence. They are peaceful because they have mastered it, regulated it, and chosen to hold it in check. His scales shifted to a warning amber. And they maintain that control every moment of every day, Dot. The hologram shifted to a new scene. A training facility on Proxima Centauri Station. Texitar's scales flickered rapidly at the memory. The incident occurred during what humans called a routine training exercise, Texitar began, emphasizing the word routine with obvious discomfort. Captain Steele was conducting a demonstration for our security forces, teaching them human close-quarter combat techniques. The footage showed Steele in standard exercise attire, facing 30 of the station's most experienced security officers from various species. Her stance appeared casual, relaxed even. We had dismissed the previous warnings about human combat capabilities, Texitar continued. After all, how dangerous could one human be against 30 trained officers? The Kraxan warriors alone possessed twice her physical strength. The Nebulon representative pulsed a curious shade of green. What prompted the escalation? Pride. Texitar's mandibles clicked in remembered embarrassment. One of the Kraxan officers challenged her to a full-contact demonstration, no restrictions. Captain Steele refused 3 times, citing safety concerns. The Kraxan insisted. The hologram captured the moment. The Kraxan warrior towering over Steele called her species weak, called humans cowards who hid behind rules. Watch her eyes, Texitar directed the assembly. That slight change in her expression. We didn't recognize it then, but that was the exact moment she decided to give us a real demonstration. The footage played. Steele's posture shifted subtly. Her friendly smile remained, but something in her eyes changed. Very well, she said in the recording. Full contact demonstration? Medical team standing by? The next 90 seconds changed our understanding of humanity forever. Texitar's scales rippled with remembered shock. The hologram showed Steele moving with impossible speed. The Kraxan warrior, despite his superior strength and reach, never landed a single blow. She flowed around his attacks like water, each movement precise, economical, lethal if not pulled at the last second. Notice her technique, Thexitar pointed out. She's not blocking his attacks. She's redirecting them, using his own strength against him, a fighting style developed over centuries of humans facing physically superior opponents. The demonstration continued. Steele took down the Kraxan warrior with a series of strikes to nerve clusters that even their medical team hadn't known existed. As he fell, 2 more officers rushed to assist. She disabled both without appearing to directly strike them. What happened next was not planned. Thexitar's voice tensed. The station's automated defense system malfunctioned, identifying the combat as a real threat. Security barriers dropped. Defense turrets activated. Warning sirens blared. The hologram showed chaos erupting in the training room. Most officers froze in confusion. Captain Steele's response was instantaneous. Without hesitation, she took command, Thexitar narrated. She disabled 3 defense turrets while simultaneously directing evacuation routes. She moved through supposedly impassable security barriers as if they were minor inconveniences. When a structural support began to fail, she calculated load distributions faster than our engineering AI. The footage showed Steele coordinating the response, her movements a blur of efficient action. She processed information from multiple sources, gave clear commands in 4 different alien languages, and maintained complete situational awareness throughout the crisis. 7 minutes, Thexitar emphasized. In 7 minutes, 1 human soldier neutralized a station-wide security malfunction that our simulations predicted would take a full response team 40 minutes to contain. The Zentari elder's crystalline form vibrated with concern. This was one of their soldiers? Not a special operative? That's what terrified us, Thexitar replied. Captain Steele later informed us that her capabilities were, by human military standards, above average but not exceptional. She was, in her words, just a Marine. The hologram showed the aftermath. Steele helping injured security officers, documenting the incident, already composing recommendations for preventing future malfunctions. When questioned about her performance, Thexitar continued, she shrugged and said this was basic training for urban combat scenarios. Basic training. Let that sink in. The chamber fell silent as the assembly processed this information. The Nebulon representative pulsed rapidly through shades of disbelief. We reviewed the incident data extensively, Thexitar added. Captain Steele had operated at approximately 60% of her maximum physical capability. She had actively avoided causing serious injury. She had prioritized protecting others over mission efficiency. And she had done all this while still adhering to their rules of engagement. The final footage showed Steele in the medical bay, being treated for minor injuries she'd sustained while protecting others. She was calmly explaining human combat tactics to a group of fascinated security officers. That day taught us 2 critical lessons about humanity. Thexitar's scales shifted to a deep shade of respect mixed with fear. First, their capacity for violence far exceeds anything we had imagined. Second, and more importantly, their capacity for restraint is even greater. Thex. S scales shifted to formal diplomatic blue as the hologram displayed the Galactic Council's emergency session following the training incident. The revelations about humanity's true nature required immediate policy adjustments, Thexitar addressed the assembly. But not in the way many expected. We didn't restrict human expansion. We didn't limit their participation in council affairs. Instead, we completely remodeled our understanding of them. The display showed various human diplomatic missions, now viewed through new eyes. Their carefully measured responses, their constant awareness, their regulated strength, all took on new meaning. Humanity didn't become more dangerous after our discovery, Thexitar continued. They had always been this way. We simply learned to recognize what had been in front of us all along. The Myraxian representative raised a tentacle. Did this not cause panic among council species? Quite the opposite. Thexitar's mandibles clicked in amusement. Once we understood humanity's dual nature, their behavior made perfect sense. Every human advancement, every diplomatic gesture, every cultural exchange carried the same message. We are choosing peace. The hologram showed Captain Steele's final presentation to the Council Security Committee. She stood at ease, hands clasped behind her back, explaining human military doctrine with disarming honesty. Consider their approach to Council membership, Thextar gestured to the display. Humans didn't hide their military capabilities because they were planning deception. They restricted information about their combat potential because they didn't want to alarm potential allies. The footage shifted to human diplomatic missions, establishing new protocols. They willingly accepted restrictions on military vessel deployments, weapons development, and force projection capabilities. But here's what truly sets humans apart, Thexitar's voice carried notes of wonder. When we finally asked them directly about their combat capabilities, they were completely transparent. Captain Steele provided full documentation of human military potential, including scenarios we hadn't even considered possible. The display showed page after page of human military assessments, tactical analyses, and strategic capabilities. The assembly stirred uncomfortably at the sheer volume of information. Their honesty was enlightening, Thexitar continued. Humans explained that hiding their true capabilities would only lead to misunderstandings and potential conflicts. They wanted us to understand exactly what they were choosing not to do. The hologram revealed new security protocols being implemented across Council space, many designed by humans themselves. Defense systems, emergency responses, threat assessments all underwent complete overhauls. Humanity's greatest weapon, Thexitar observed, wasn't their combat capability or their tactical expertise. It was their willingness to acknowledge their capacity for violence while choosing to direct it toward peaceful purposes. The display showed human military units conducting joint exercises with Council security forces, teaching them enhanced protection protocols and defensive strategies. We discovered that humans make excellent partners precisely because they understand conflict so well. Thexitar's scales rippled with appreciation. They anticipate problems we never considered. They plan for contingencies we thought impossible. They prepare for threats while working tirelessly to prevent them. The Nebulon representative pulsed a thoughtful shade of blue. This changes the balance of power within the Council. No, Thexitar corrected. It reveals the balance that already existed. Humans never wanted power over the Council. They wanted partnership with it. Every restriction on their military activities was matched by knowledge sharing about defense and security. The hologram showed the newly established Human Council Joint Security Initiative. Humans teaching combat medicine to alien medics, sharing defensive technology with Council engineers, training security forces in enhanced protection protocols. Captain Steele said something profound during her final briefing, Thexitar recalled. She told us, the strongest warrior isn't the one who wins every fight. It's the one who can prevent fights from happening while being ready, if they can't be prevented. The display shifted to scenes across Council space. Human engineers helping strengthen planetary defenses, human doctors advancing trauma medicine, human scientists improving emergency response systems. We no longer see humans as harmless. Thexitar's scales shifted to a complex pattern of respect and caution. We see them as they truly are, a species that mastered violence not by eliminating it, but by understanding it completely and choosing to direct it toward protection rather than dominance. The final hologram showed a new generation of Council security forces training under human instruction, learning not just combat techniques, but when not to use them, understanding not just how to fight, but why to avoid it if possible. And so, Thexitar concluded, we find ourselves in an unprecedented position. We have allies who possess immense capacity for warfare, yet dedicate themselves to peace, who understand violence intimately, yet strive to prevent it, who maintain their combat capabilities while hoping never to use them. His scales settled into a formal pattern of resolution. The Council's official assessment of humanity stands thus. They are not peaceful because they are harmless. They are peaceful because they chose to be, understanding better than any of us exactly what that choice means. The chamber lights rose slowly as Thexitar made his final observation. Remember this, colleagues. Every human you meet, from their scientists to their diplomats to their civilians, carries this duality within them. They are a species that created rules for warfare, not because they couldn't wage war without limits, but because they could and chose not to. End recording, the automated system announced. Assessment session 2749 concluded.